So I was scrolling through YouTube and saw this video with monopolize and spelled out with all of these tech companies using their logos as the letters, and thought to myself, yeah, there are a lot of monopolies. There's basically a few companies that we do everything with. For searching, it's Google. For phones, it's iPhone. Maybe throw Android in there. You maybe have two in that category, right? For streaming, it was Netflix for a long time. And there's competitors now, but they still don't stack up to Netflix. So these companies and tech companies have become so big, so giant, and made so much money that they just become really the only option. But not all monopolies are illegal. I don't know if these are the correct terms, but like a horizontal monopoly is the illegal type. A vertical monopoly or vertically integrated one is perfectly legal. If you have a company like Walmart saying they own the distribution centers, they own the warehouses, the stores, they own the website to sell things or whatever, just break that down. If you own all of those, that's actually allowed because it ultimately gives the consumer a better experience and a better price. Usually it brings prices down, whereas a vertical monopoly or a horizontal monopoly would be owning just all the distribution centers. So then you could charge whatever you wanted because the other companies that want to be part of that logistics can't go anywhere else. So you become just this monopoly that charges insane prices and people lose. So there are types of monopolies that are actually allowed. Well, let's jump into this video and see what is going on with the tech monopolies.
Not all monopolies are necessarily illegal, and hot take alert, some of them
It
can even
started
be
with
good for
this.
consumers. A company is allowed to have market dominance if their product is better than all their competitors, or if no competitors even bother trying to compete because one company has such a commanding lead. Google, for a long time, had the best.
So that'd be a different way of doing it, right? If you just have such a dominant product that no one wants to compete, like, then there's no competition. But there should always be competition, really.
Search engine on the internet. That's a bit more questionable these days, but people choose to Google things because that would normally give them the best search results. That's not illegal, unless that company uses its market dominance to entrench its position and make it harder for others to compete. Today, there are lots of search engines that are just as good, if not better, than Google.
I don't know if I agree with that statement. Bing, DuckDuckGo, and Brave. I don't know if Brave has their own search engine. I've used the Brave browser. I guess it's their own search. I thought it was through DuckDuckGo that they used. Maybe that's just how I set it up. But Bing, definitely not even competitive with Google. Who uses Bing, right? DuckDuckGo was this privacy one, which actually was decent, right? Until it came out that they actually weren't private. They were selling your data to, I think, Microsoft. So they just straight up lied to you. So you might as well have used Google if you were scared about data because they're doing the same thing, and then Google's product is still just better. So don't know if I agree that these search engines are just as good or better than Google. Maybe Bing can get there with ChatGPT because Google's AI assistant has had lots of drama. Seems like it's gotten better, but right now, I mean, Google's still number one.
Actually got in trouble for was paying companies like Apple billions of dollars every year to make their search engine the default on their mobile phones, which made it much harder for these alternative search engines to compete. Because, let's be honest with ourselves, who is changing the search engine default options on our phones? Obviously, I am not a lawyer, and while I did consult one while writing this brief outline, if you ever find yourself running a Fortune 500 company, you probably shouldn't use a YouTube video as a guide on how to enact anti-competitive measures. Now, the reason this otherwise standard antitrust lawsuit is such a big deal is because monopolies have become an epidemic in the modern corporate world for three simple reasons.
So what they're talking about here with this, like they entered this with, is Google. What they got in trouble with, they actually did get. It's still ongoing. They have a case against them of being a monopoly, being broken up. Will it actually happen? Probably not, right? Google, major tech company, they have tons of money. I'm sure something will be figured out that they don't actually get broken up, but maybe they do. But they pay Apple billions of dollars to make sure that Google is the default search engine. They pay Android, Samsung, and all these other companies as well to be default options. I think Firefox is a big one that they pay, and that's basically like why Firefox can operate because of that money. So it's weird that they are doing this to be this dominant, right? Um, and it's just leaves no room for someone to compete because Apple, if you make a new search engine and it's better than Google and it's just amazing and spectacular, Apple just won't put it on their phones because Google's paying them billions of dollars. So you could see how that becomes a problem.
The first reason is that there is simply more opportunity than ever to create a monopoly. The goods and services that we consume are far more varied today than they have ever been at any point, even in modern history. 4 decades ago, there weren't any search engines to monopolize, and the world's biggest companies made far more basic products. Take US Steel and Nvidia. Both of these companies were the most valuable in the world at their respective peaks. Both of them made products primarily to service other businesses, and both of them were at the forefront of an industrial trend. According to company filings, Nvidia sold 150,000 of these chips to Microsoft alone, and another 150,000 to Meta, so that the companies could accelerate the rate. And
this is a problem too. So I don't know if this has to do with like being a monopoly, but Microsoft and Facebook, they basically are giving Nvidia all of their money. That's what people talk about. Nvidia stock, I think, down from their earnings and stuff, and people dug into it. And it's actually, you can see it over here. Like, it's these big companies, big tech companies that are basically doing all of Nvidia's volume. So Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, these giant tech companies, they're the ones buying these chips. And people look down the line, maybe, these chips aren't, or AI is not paying off. There's billions of dollars going into AI right now, and they're not getting billions of dollars of revenue out of it. So if this does go south and these big tech companies either make their own or decide to do it themselves or abandon this and say AI is not worth it, it's just not having the ROI, Nvidia's in trouble. But yeah, these big tech's the buyers.
Apple creates a monopoly with its product ecosystem. Microsoft has an effective monopoly on operating systems outside of Apple products. Google has a monopoly on search engine and online video. Aramco has a monopoly on Saudi oil, and Meta has a monopoly on boomer memes. These are the companies that have made it to the promised land of market dominance. But there are also trillions of dollars being invested into companies that do nothing but take market share. Food delivery, ride-sharing, and even AI applications tend to lose a lot of money, and are only kept alive by constant investor funding rounds.
And this is part of the monopoly stuff too, right? So when you look at companies like Google and Meta and all these big tech companies, they have this main product that works in Google, the search engine, right? And it makes so much money. They have Google Ads and AdSense that just pumps money into Google, that they're able to do other things and offer them for free, like Gmail and Google, or they like Google Sheets and stuff, and Google Docs. Those, like, there was a time when Microsoft had Microsoft Word and all that, and you had to pay to use that service. And Google came along and said, "We'll do it for free because we have so much money and we can get new customers and more people into their ecosystem." So there are benefits to a monopoly or just a giant company for a consumer, where things that you would normally have to pay for, you can now use for free and not have to, and get a similar, if not better, product. So there are good things that come from this. And like this said, like, competitors and stuff need insane funding. Like Microsoft funded and bought a bunch of OpenAI. So whether you think that's a good thing or not, they pumped money into that to get that project up off the ground. So there are benefits sometimes to having giant companies.
Companies like Lucid Motors, Uber, and OpenAI lose money on every new customer and user they gain. But their investors don't care as long as they are gaining market share.
Silicon
if those
Valley
companies
effect.
do become a monopoly, then they can fatten up their margins and join the trillion-dollar club with the other tech monopolies. Now, this all sounds pretty dystopian, but in some rare circumstances, it can actually be good for you as a regular person. For a while, you could enjoy incredibly cheap food delivery, which was partially paid for by some Silicon Valley venture capitalist. And the user experience of streaming movies was better when Netflix controlled the entire streaming market. So it's time to learn how money works to find out what.
So this too, what he's talking about here, like, the growth project or the idea of these companies like Uber, DoorDash, all these like startups here that lose tons of money. They do that. The Silicon Valley like thought process is burn all the money you want. As long as you're growing users, you can make the money back later. And we're kind of seeing the effects of that, where DoorDash, Airbnb, Uber, when they first started, were great deals. Airbnb is the easiest one to look at. It was cheaper to stay at Airbnb and a better experience most of the time where you could just go, stay there. It was cheaper, not have to worry about anything, and then leave, and you had a whole house to yourself. Now you have cleaning fees, rules, regulations. You got to take the trash out, make the beds before you leave, and it's actually more expensive than a hotel. So that's the path that these companies go down: is gain users first, get people addicted or needing to use the service, and then later, once they're already used to using it, up the prices and make the money back.
One of the best ways to build a monopoly is to just buy out every other competitor, which is exactly what has been happening. Just this week, the global food giant Mars agreed to purchase Kellanova, the makers of Pringles and other snack foods, for $36 billion. This is one of the largest corporate acquisitions ever in an industry that is already dominated by a small handful of companies.
This might be a good way to look at monopolies, right? This is a few companies, but where you have the illusion of choice, especially in the grocery store. All of these brands, you think that, maybe some are owned together, but you think that you can choose, but you go to the cereal aisle, all these cereals, all run by Kellogg's. All these candies, Mars, all of these drinks and stuff, Pepsi or Coke. So you really don't have a choice. Now, is it good or bad? Who really knows? Because it could be bad in a sense where if they get such market dominance with all these products that they can just charge whatever they want because there's no alternatives, that's a bad thing, right? And then they own all the shelf space and it'd be tough for a competitor to break in. That's where it goes bad. That's where the problem starts.
According to public data compiled by the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, funding for the FTC and the Department of Justice's Antitrust Division has been cut progressively since 2008, even though deal volume and complexity has massively increased since then.
So basically, and should probably be no surprise to anyone, companies want to be monopolies. It's the easier way to do business, right? If you just control everything and have control of everything and don't have to compete. But the consumer loses in that situation. So it's a balancing act to make sure that monopolies don't take over and that people could actually have competition. Because at the end of the day, competition is needed to make everything better. You don't get worse outcomes with more competition. It just doesn't exist. You get better products, cheaper products, and things just get better and better. So that's the focus should be: creating more competition and allowing more competition instead of funneling companies and startups all into the same 4 big tech companies. So my camera died. If you saw at the end there was no one in the little square. We had an error. So we'll use the webcam here to finish off this video and just say monopolies seemingly making a comeback. Who knows what the future has, if we're going to be able to get rid of this and not have to deal with monopolies, or if this is just what the future has in store. But that's gonna do it for this video. As always, do hit the smash button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next